Hello everyone, my name is Shizu and today I will be giving you a brief overview of my mixing workflow. Just FYI, I will not be going too much into tuning or timing because I actually don't have the recording session for this project right now since I moved my PC a few weeks ago. If you want a specific video about that topic, just let me know and we can get into that another time because I think it makes sense to put this in a different video just because it can be quite complex, but it's interesting, so yeah, just let me know. But still, to give you a hint of what my unedited audio sounds like, I will play a few seconds of it. Yes, that is pretty much the raw audio. I think I already timed it a little bit before rendering it, but yeah, I usually record my vocals in Reaper. This right here is FL Studio, which I use for mixing. Nowadays, I sometimes also use Reaper for the mix, but especially for projects like this one where I have some more complicated effects and automations, I just like to use FL because I'm more comfortable with it. Yeah, so you just heard my raw audio. That's the way it sounds when I record it in my little booth that I made out of my wardrobe. If you want, I can also give you some recording tips someday, how to get kind of clean audio or more clean audio without a huge budget. But let's get into that another time. For now, you've heard how it sounds. Let's see what I start with. So you can see this is already the finished result. That's what it looks like. I have quite a few vocal tracks and also quite a few snippets, clips of the vocals in this project already. But yeah, let's just go through it step by step. So first of all, of course, you need your instrumental track. If you haven't made it yourself, then maybe it's smart to just put the vocals in your project where you already created your instrumental track, but this is the official instrumental, and of course I only have this pre-mastered WAV, or maybe it's MP3? I don't know. The quality is decent, so that's what matters most. Usually, if you can get your hands onto a WAV instrumental, it's always better to use this because it's less compressed. As you can see, if I play it over here, this little gap in the higher frequencies shows that the audio is not uncompressed. If I had a wave track, for example my vocal recording, you can see that also in the upper end of the frequency spectrum there are frequencies available, and yeah, that's just the way WAV and MP3 work. But usually you don't really hear much of a difference, and especially for fan covers it doesn't really matter. But if you want to achieve a very high quality result, you should get your hands onto a high quality WAV instrumental. That's on that. First of all, I'm putting this one on my first mixer track. And as you can see, there are no effects on this one. Usually, as I just said, the instrumentals are already mastered, so any form of effects are not necessary. What I like to do sometimes, depending on the project, is to put an equalizer on the instrumental, and around that part, like somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 hertz, I like to just bring it down a little bit, because in this area the voice is most present, and if you have a very overcompressed instrumental with lots of things going on, sometimes the vocal doesn't come through the right way, so a little bit like that can help. But it's not necessary. It really depends on the project. Yeah, that's that. Now for the most important part, probably the main vocal. Okay, so without any effects and nothing but the instrumental lowered like 4 decibels, it sounds like this. Not much going on, it sounds quite raw. Well, that's because it is. So what we want to do is first of all start with an equalizer. A quick disclaimer at that part, you can use various unique options for mixing. There is no correct way to mix. Of course, there are some basics that you should be aware of, that you should know, just technical basics, how frequencies work, etc. But in general, there is not one specific way how to mix vocals and anything really. If you achieve a result that you are comfortable with, that you are okay with, that sounds good to you, then that's all that matters. So just as a disclaimer, the way I mix is not the one way to mix. Definitely not. And I am still learning and improving, even though I have a degree in audio engineering. So yeah, what you can see here is quite messy, to be honest. I have to check what I did here. So usually what I always start with is a low cut. So this right here, the low frequencies are cut. In this case, I used a low cut at 150 hertz, which is quite high actually. So I chose this specific low cut because it's a pop song and the vocals are quite in your face and powerful, and I wanted to create some kind of sharpness to it. So I decided to remove some of the warmth. For example, if I activate this. Versus without. It sounds way less present, in my opinion, which is why I pulled up this part, the high end, at about 10 kilohertz, because around this part, 10 to 12 kilohertz, that's where the presence or the sharpness of the vocal usually lies. So I tend to just pull that one up. Usually I give it quite a bit of power, so that's a very subjective thing to do. You don't have to do this, but I personally really like how it sounds if I just pull that one up to the sky. Not that much, of course. And because I have some kind of nasal tone in my voice at around this part, like 5 kilohertz, I usually pull that one down a bit as well. About EQing, you really have to know that it takes a lot of practice to hear what you have to pull up and what you have to pull down, or what you want to pull up or down. Because one, it's a thing of taste, as always, as everything mixing related is. And two, you have to kind of learn where exactly your frequencies are. So if you have some sort of frequency in your recording that you want to pull out or make louder, you kind of have to learn how to get the feeling for where in the frequency spectrum it probably is. And what I usually like to do, if I'm not 100% sure, is I just like to pull it up quite a bit and then play. Until I find what exactly I don't like, and then I can pull it out, and usually I like the results better. Yeah, so for this part, in my vocal booth, there isn't much warmth. It kind of sounds boxy sometimes, but not the way that you want it to sound boxy. So for this project, I decided to amp up the 300 hertz part a little bit. That's around where my bass note, I think it's called, of the vocals lies. So somewhere in between 200 and 400 hertz is probably where the bass note of my voice is in this part. So I kind of like to pull that one up as well. That's for EQing for now. Next part, we have to look at a compressor. At this point, let me give you a recommendation for this bundle, the FabFilter bundle. It is not cheap, but it's really worth its money. Especially if you're a student, you get a 50% discount, and I bought it while I was still studying, and I have not regretted it a single day. I literally use these plugins every day. You can get different bundles, and it's really worth it. So if you are a person that mixes a lot, that makes music themselves, I can really, really recommend this. So, compressor. So what we do here is we kind of push down the peaks of the recording. So the louder parts of the recording are pushed down. You can see here's the threshold at around minus 10 decibels. So whenever the recording is louder than that, minus 18 actually, then it's pulled down at a 3.8:1 ratio. And the resulting audio will be a bit more quiet. Now you're thinking, okay, if I compress my vocal recordings, aren't they supposed to be louder? And the answer is yes, in the end they are, because you add the makeup gain in the end, or wet gain in this case. And if you pull that one up, I did it with 1.4 decibels here, then you pull up everything. So by lowering the loudest parts, bringing the loudest parts closer to the more quiet parts, and then pulling up the volume for everything in the end, you make the more quiet parts louder. So that's basically what it is. You make your audio less dynamic. And that's what gives it this kind of pop music feel to it. As a comparison, that's the recording without compression. And that's with compression. You can probably hear it better in a louder part, like this one. You usually want to use lots of compression on songs like this that have quite loud instrumentals and that are supposed to be in your face and really energetic. Yeah, so compression and equalizing are the basics of mixing, pretty much. There is no way to mix a song without using at least one equalizer and compressor somewhere. Everything else is up to you, but these two are usually crucial for mixing. Next up we have this one. It's called Camel Crusher, and unfortunately it doesn't work right now. As I said, I have a new computer and I tried to reinstall this one, but it just doesn't show up. But actually what that does, it's just another compressor, a bit more aggressive, and also a saturator. So basically what it does, it adds some harmonics. So in the higher part it adds some overtones. And yeah, that just makes it sound even more present and more in your face. So Camel Crusher has some options for distortion as well, and it's a very cool plugin if it works, which it doesn't right now, but believe me, if it works, it's really cool. So next up we have a de-esser. What a de-esser does essentially is just, as the name already states, it pulls out the S frequencies. So if you use equalizers like I do, and you pull up your high end like I do, like something dramatic like 10 decibels almost, then it can be, depending on your vocalist, that the S sounds are kind of sharp and they almost hurt your ear. Sometimes people like that, they tend to keep it in, especially if you have an instrumental that allows it or that is already quite full in the higher spectrum and you have to keep it to kind of let the vocal stay present. But usually, especially for pop music, it's just a little bit much and maybe even annoying. So you usually use a de-esser. And this plugin also by FabFilter is quite cool for that. I used a female split band preset and kind of mess around with the settings a little bit. This threshold says when exactly the de-esser is supposed to kick in, and the range is how much it kicks in. For the shi and the zo, it kicked in, and you can see here it's 3 decibels that are removed. And if I pull this one up, you can see there's quite a bit. 18 decibels gone missing. That's obviously too much. And if you use too much de-esser, it can sound like a lisp almost, and usually you don't want that in your recording. You're supposed to find the right setting for this one as well. Really depends on your vocalist and how their S's sound. Next up, I have new tone here, which I only used for one note, so it's not really necessary. But as I already said, if you're interested in a tuning tutorial or in a walkthrough of how I tune vocals, let me know. I used new tone for quite a bit. I now changed to Melodyne because it's more precise. But for small parts, I sometimes use new tone out of convenience, and it's quite cool. Yes! Next up, we have a pitcher. That's basically what some people think of when people speak of tuning, but this one is automatic tuning, if you will. You can set a scale here. This song is in C# major, so that's what I set it in. I set a fast speed, and what that sounds like if I activate it is this. And that's of course not what we want in this part specifically, but if you can recall the original cover, back here we have a part where the vocalist goes up and there's a small pitcher effect applied to it. It sounds like this. Just a little stylistic device at this point. So not too important right now, it's really just that small part. And then I have another equalizer that is set to this, so actually you can't hear much with this setting. It's almost gone because all the high frequencies up to this point are cut away. And I used this plugin because it's less CPU intensive than the FabFilter one. And I used this as an effect because over here we have this part. In this part, for this build-up, I used an automation for the main vocal where it kind of blends into a high-cut version. Let's listen to it. And the automation actually happens on a different track, this one. Here you can see it goes up. And at that point, it's already disabled again. So that's what that is. Then we have a fruity balance, which I use for volume automation, which you can see over here. That's just this track where the volume stays the same, except for this part, because I wanted to emphasize this powerful M sound, but it's not very loud by itself, so I kind of turned it up that way. Okay, that's that for the main vocal, I think. Except for this one, and that is a limiter also by FabFilter, a very cool limiter in my opinion. And what this does is it assures me that my vocals will not clip because there is a limiter on it, which prevents it from clipping. I set it to 0 decibel true peak, which is quite ambitious. Usually you would go for something like -1 decibels, but yeah, this song has a limiter on the master as well. We'll get to that in a second. But what I did is essentially pull up all the things that I described before by 5 more decibels, just to make it more loud in general. So we're left with this. And now, the next part, you can see I already have quite a few of these effect slots used here, but that's no problem because I can easily connect this one to a reverb send. So what this does essentially is it sends the signal going from this channel to this channel only. So it's not going directly into the master, but in this channel. So it goes from there, to the master. You can see here the reverb channel is connected to the master track. And on this reverb channel, I have a plate reverb and a delay plugin. So if I activate this, a plate reverb is quite cool for this one. You can use any reverb, of course, whatever you have available. I just liked the sound of this one for this project. And just a small delay, like a small slapback delay. That just has some stereo to it, so it goes hum, pum, 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 like left and right. Just adds some more presence to it. And I usually use these sends for it because I only have to set up these effects once, because I can also send my doubles and my harmonies, which I didn't in this case, but I can also send them into the send. So the main vocal goes into the reverb, the double goes into the reverb, so I don't have to use more of these slots for it. And that's quite cool because it saves some performance. It's more friendly to the computer, essentially. There's only one operation going at the same time. Yeah, speaking of which, let's go to the double. Real quick, I didn't equalize that one as precisely as the main vocal. I just gave it a low cut at around 260 Hertz. again, because we don't need the lower end. And took a bit of the higher frequencies because that way it sounds less present. We want the main vocal to sound most present and the double just to be some kind of support. And yeah, that's why I took some of the higher frequencies out of it. Then, of course, again, compression. Stronger compression than on the main vocal. That's what I usually do because, as I said, I just want the doubles, also the harmonies, which we'll get to in a second, to be some kind of support for the main vocal. And that's why they don't need that dynamic range. They just have to be that extra layer that goes behind the main vocal if needed. And then another camel crusher, which still doesn't work, and a flanger. So basically what a flanger does is spread the frequencies across the stereo range. It kind of delays the phase of left and right for a little bit. So it just kind of sounds like multiple vocals. If I disable it, it sounds like this.
Alright, don't mind, nandai.
Versus on.
Alright, don't mind, nandai. No.
Kind of sounds like several layered vocals, and I just like that effect. It saves time because you don't have to actually record 2 or 3 more doubles. That's quite convenient. And also, again, a limiter just to be sure that nothing is overriding. Then we'll get to the harmonies. Usually I use one harmony track for all the harmonies. You can, of course, give every harmony clip a different mixer channel, but I usually don't do that because in FL Studio I can just pan these individually, which I didn't do in this case for some reason, but you can. And what I used here is, again, an equalizer. This time I pulled up the high frequencies just a little bit to give it more clarity, compressed them again, and I used a microshift. Microshift does something similar than the flanger does. It just shifts the frequencies and creates this stereo-like effect. So without the reverb, it sounds like this. And then, of course, a reverb that is a bit different from the one that I used on the main vocal because I cut the higher frequencies so that they are less present. They have some reverb, but not in the higher parts. So with the reverb, it sounds like this. And then we have the ad-lib. We have, again, the same things. For some reason, I have 2 compressors on this one. Don't know why, to be honest, but let's just roll with it. And this one I actually cut at 400 Hertz. So this was supposed to just be in the background a bit. So this kind of sounds like a radio effect almost.
Nine.
And yeah, it's quite compressed, as you can see here. It's just supposed to be in the background. And also on the double track, I have this one, which is just a duplicated version of the ad-lib part that we just listened to, but pitched down by 12 half tones, so an octave down, basically. And this just adds this doubled effect.
Nine.
Which is quite cool. And now all that is left is this group part. So on this one, I only put an equalizer just to cut out everything that we don't need. Pull it up a little bit. It's supposed to be in the background of the vocals. And I just put it on the reverb track as well. Turned down the volume a little bit. And I have quite some of these. These are just the kind of chants, kind of chorus parts. These are doubled with more tracks that are mixed more presently. That just kind of creates this thick group sound. And basically, that is almost all to it. Except for some special effects, of course. For example, this one. So, this one's pretty easy. Actually, I only cut the part of the vocals, so without the cutting, it sounds like this. And I just repeated the last part. And then there's a similar part at this one. And yeah, this one's a bit more complicated. As I said before, I automated the equalizer to kind of go up to reveal more higher frequencies. And then I, again, cut the sample, but I pitch automated it, which you can see here. This is the pitch automation for this track. And if you take a look at this knob right here, it goes from almost 0 to above 13 in this motion that I automated here. And this creates the pitch variation that you can hear. This part is quite similar. But for this one, I made the pitch automation by hand. So I copied this clip, the D part, and made each one of them unique and just turned it up by 1/2 note for every repetition. So it ends up like this. Because it doesn't go up linearly, it goes up step by step. Another cool thing to know about this part, if you move in closer, you can see that this vocal right here is actually very, very distorted. Like when I recorded this, I was loud and it distorted quite a lot. But actually, I liked how it sounded. Ow! So if you hear it like this, you can obviously hear it's distorted. But for this part, distortion actually isn't that much of a bad choice because it's supposed to be loud and in your face. And so I decided to keep it in because it had the right energy. And also for this one, ow! It distorts quite a bit, and usually that is not what you do. That is not clean audio. It's not easy to repair distorted tracks. Nowadays, it's not impossible, but technically seen, it's broken. So this recording right here is technically broken, but I thought it sounded cool, so I decided to keep it in. And yeah, I think that's about it for this song. This was quite fun to mix. Let's see how long it took me actually. I think I spent about 2 hours on the mix. A bit less than that probably. And yeah, especially these special effects over here are things that I really like to do from time to time because it's just fun to experiment and to see how to achieve a result that is as similar as possible to the original. Of course, this half an hour or whatever this comes down to is not enough time to fully explain how mixing is done and what you have to look out for. But maybe this gave you an idea of how to approach your mix the next time. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Of course, I also take mixing commissions. If you don't want to do it yourself, I got you. But yeah, it's always cool to learn some new things and to get a better look at things. And yeah, if you want to hear more of this, more specific topics, perhaps just let me know and I will make sure to help you out. For now, thank you for watching. And yeah, see and hear you next time. Bye-bye!
Yeah! Ow!